Hey, how's it going, universe? How's it going, America? Today we're going to be talking about Roland Emmerich's The Patriot from 2000. The film is directed by Roland Emmerich, written by Robert Rodat, stars Mel Gibson, Heath Ledger, Jolie Richardson, Jason Isaacs, Chris Cooper, Lisa Brenner, Tom Wilkinson, Donald Logue, Adam Baldwin, J. Arlen Jones, and others. The plot synopsis is peaceful farmer Benjamin Martin is driven to lead the colonial militia during the American Revolution when a sadistic British officer murders his son. So yeah, Roland Emmerich's the fuck out of the Revolutionary War, except not. It has all the trappings of a Roland Emmerich movie. If you don't know who Roland Emmerich is, director of Independence Day, the movie he made right before this, Godzilla 98, everybody's favorite Godzilla movie. If you want to go back, I actually did a review of Godzilla 98 not that long ago. Well, actually, it was a couple months ago, but I did talk about it for about 20 minutes. So you can go and enjoy that. And then he did The Patriot as a follow-up to Godzilla 98. And he definitely seems like he has a little bit more passion here. He's trying really hard to make one of these kind of populist historical dramas, kind of in the vein of something like Braveheart. You know, you got Mel Gibson in the cast. He's going for that. He's going for that broadly entertaining, fun, but also very serious and very grim kind of story. Because if you look into the history of the American Revolution, and especially with the militia guys, like, it's a very interesting part of history, of American history. And it was kind of brutal, and a lot of fucked up things happened, and a lot of fucked up things were done. And it was, kind of the birth of the guerrilla warfare type stuff, people stopping, just marching towards each other while shooting. This grand game of Russian roulette, I think somebody called it, some historical figure called it, I can't remember who. So it introduces this different way of doing things, as far as warfare goes, and kind of the lengths people were going to, especially the Crown. The rules they would bend in the face of having to deal with these revolutionaries. So there's a lot of fucked up things happen. And in this story, it represents a lot of the fucked up things that do happen. It actually has a lot of really dark moments. And Emmerich, because he's such a pandering populist, cannot modulate his movie where any of that stuff lands. He just doesn't have it in him. Like, if it's not fucking aliens or something goofy, or like a giant asteroid, or like the fucking world freezing over, or 2012 or whatever, if he doesn't have that stuff in his movie, he kind of doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know how to create actual drama. There's some good performances in this movie. I think like Jason Isaacs is a lot of fun. Mel Gibson is pretty good. He's giving a very Mel Gibson of this era of performance. But they're not really characters. They're stand-ins for real people. They're kind of an amalgamation of real characters. But what they kind of represent to the movie are bigger things. They're monolithic things. They are the essence of something. Like, Jason Isaacs is a mustache-twirling villain. He represents everything that the revolution was fighting against. And then you have Mel Gibson on the other hand, on the other side of that coin, where he is like the beleaguered pacifist ex-soldier farmer. He knows how horrible war can be. He doesn't want to have that in his family. That's why he lives where he lives. That's why he does what he does. But war comes to his doorstep, and the ultimate pacifist has to give in to save his family, basically. And the story is framed that way. Like, sure, he has principle, and he believes in the American project, but it's really through the prism of his family. And it costs him dearly. Even doing it this way ends up costing him dearly. And the movie it's never able to really invest you in any of that stuff in any real way. And I think some of that is because, again, Roland Emmerich always has this problem. There's so many fucking characters, and it gives all of them their due. And which ends up not being a good thing, because there's just too many of them. So everybody kind of gets underdeveloped. Everybody gets a very movie moment, like a movie-like moment, but nobody ever feels real. They all feel kind of like cartoon characters to a certain degree. It's like the Saturday morning cartoon version of the Revolutionary War. And even when the dark shit happens, it just like doesn't know how to. I don't know. It's like Roland Emmerich just cannot create drama out of him to save his life. I don't know why it doesn't work. It's not a bad movie. Like I said, it's not bad. It's a very watchable movie. It's surprisingly a quick sit for being almost 3 hours long. I did not find myself like dying to get out of there like I was with like something like Godzilla. I was interested. I was invested. It's got enough kind of details, like tangible texture stuff that I think is fascinating. Apparently the Smithsonian was actually involved in like the costuming and setting up stuff and some of the set work and whatnot. So there was a lot of attention to detail with that kind of stuff. And that stuff is fun and interesting to look at. Roland Emmerich, for some reason, like does not shoot it very well. He got these giant casts, because this is right before CGI. So there's like right before the proliferation of CGI, where it's like, well, if you have to have a army of 500 people, well, you just do CGI soldiers for most of them. No, he really had giant casts of extras, and there was a ton of people, and a lot of that stuff is practically done, and he does not know how to shoot any of it. It's like if it's not created in a fucking computer where he could just have a mouse and a God's eye view and just go all over the place, like he does not know what to do with it. The movie honestly does not look great. Who is the cinematographer on this movie? Because I was actually surprised of how flat the movie looked. Caleb Deschanel. Is that Zoe's dad? Let's see. I mean, he's done a bunch of Mel Gibson stuff. He was the cinematographer for The Lion King. For Being There. The Passion of the Christ, which I would actually give the same criticism to. It looks a little TV movie-ish. Winter's Tale. Yeah, I mean, the stuff that I'm seeing makes sense. National Treasure. There's just kind of a flat, overlit, almost like bright, cartoony look to the movie. It's kind of weird. Because it juxtaposes that stuff with like real intense darkness. But the movie never communicates it to you in a way that is, I felt, impactful. I just had a hard time investing in any of the characters. Like I said, I don't think you spend enough time with them. I think some of it feels like just openly manipulative. Spoiler alert. 2 of Mel Gibson's sons die. Heath Ledger dies at the end of the movie after his wife and her family are put into a church, and they are all burned alive. They're all burned alive. And the movie just does not know how to deal with it. And not know, and so like the big thing is like, oh, now Heath Ledger freaks out and he wants revenge, and he just charges off, and somehow he stumbles across Jason Isaacs. Jason Isaacs ends up killing him. Okay. And at that point in the movie, it's like is tragedy stacking. Is that a term? I just made it up. It's like tragedy stacking. And but none of it feels impactful because you can never sit with an event because so many other things have to happen. So I guess maybe that is the answer to the question. Like, why isn't it impactful? Why doesn't it work? Because so many other things have to happen. So many other plot mechanics have to keep moving. The wheel has to keep turning because the movie's already almost 3 hours long. So you never get to sit with anything. You never see the characters they don't ever feel like there's like some long-term reverberations of like the things that have happened. I mean, you see a dude, his family gets fucking murdered by these British because they're doing like a Sherman's march across part of, I think, North Carolina. The British officers, after they're like, we got to get these militia guys, so we're going to do whatever we need to do. No more decorum. His wife and son are dead, and then he shoots himself in the head, and then maybe about 30 seconds later, we're at a scene where like Mel Gibson is like returning to his family who are hiding, and then his son gets married. Like, it just doesn't ever stop to like really take in that this guy just killed himself because his family was murdered by British officers. Heath Ledger is upset because his new family was burned alive in a church. Was fucking burned alive. Like, that's crazy. That's dark as fuck. The movie just keeps going though. And the characters just, you don't ever feel like the weight of these events carrying through. like informing their actions other than like being angry. I don't know. I thought it was really weird. I thought it was just weird, like how hollow and mechanical some of the deaths felt, especially some of the big ones. I mean, Jason guy like shoots like a 15-year-old kid in the beginning of the movie, but the movie just does not know how to make you feel sad about it. It's weird. Maybe I'm just cold. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. Usually, stuff with like children in peril like really gets to me, especially after having a kid, because it's really easy to project yourself into that scenario, right? But here I was just like, well, the kid kind of sucked anyways. Maybe that's just me. Like I said, maybe I'm just a cold, cynical bastard. It just doesn't, I don't know. It just didn't play very well for some reason. And it's just, I mean, I guess maybe the extended cut is better. The extended cut is 3 hours long and some change, I think. I think it's like 15 or 16 minutes longer. And I was like, I don't want to watch the 3 hour cut. I'll just go with the director or the theatrical cut. Like, cause I've had this for a little while sitting there, and it's funny. Anytime I buy a movie on the cheap, like, cause I got this for like $7 from HamiltonBooks.com. You should check them out. Great deals. I got it on 4K, and it's just been kind of sitting on the shelf. And then it's now it's on Netflix. Like, now it's very easy and accessible to see. Because I thought, like, oh, cool, The Patriot. I haven't seen The Patriot in forever. It had been probably since, I don't know, since I actually watched The Patriot, probably since like 2002 or something like that. I've never really watched it as an adult, because I never really liked it. I always thought it always kind of fell flat for me. And I think it's probably a movie that your average moviegoer probably has fond memories of. It is like a pandering crowd pleaser in that sense. It checks all the boxes that you want in something like this. And also, Mel Gibson looks straight up like Samuel Adams. Like, if you put his face on a bottle of Sam Adams, nobody would know the difference. You'd fool them all. But yeah, can I recommend The Patriot? I think if you're just like a casual moviegoer, yes. And I do think there's some cool stuff, like I said, the Smithsonian working with them, making the movie. There's a lot of cool textual stuff. A lot of cool things to look at. It's interesting to see that way of life represented. And it does an okay job with it. It feels like one of these movies that it has so many like things going on behind the scenes, and like and it feels like a lot of it gets kind of lost in translation. I think some of it, like, cause just speaking of the Smithsonian again with the costuming, it doesn't really matter because of the cinematography is kind of shit. It's kind of flat and TV movie-ish. And I was really underwhelmed by it while watching it. I don't know what they were going for, some sort of like iconic, almost like mythic melodrama look to the movie. This kind of American myth story type thing. A lot of ambers, a lot of softness. There's a lot of soft glows and whatnot. I thought it looked awful, in my opinion. Did not like that. I wish I liked it more. I wish it was better, because I don't know if there really is a good or great like movie about the Revolutionary War. Anything specific. And apparently, because they tried to get Harrison Ford on board with the movie to play the Mel Gibson character, and he was like, he said no. He's like, they take the entire American Revolutionary War and they turn it into like this man's like revenge story, and he's like, that's just not interesting. And I think that's true. I think distilling the story down to kind of be just about kind of one man's kind of pedantic journey. None of these characters change. They don't grow. They don't learn anything. They are just archetypes, and they are the same people they are in the beginning as they are at the end, because that's not the kind of movie it is. It's just not. I think it is kind of like, in a weird way, it is kind of like a companion piece to something like Braveheart, although I would say Braveheart is probably the better movie. It's been a while since I watched Braveheart. I've been meaning to revisit Braveheart recently. But I would say that's probably the better movie out of these two, for sure. Because while that is also populous, while it also kind of a crowd pleaser, and a little bit pandering. I think the characters' work is a lot stronger in Braveheart. I think the characters just in general are better and better etched, and you have a real sense of their history, and you get a better sense of the time and place I think that story takes place. Whereas in this one, it feels very muddled. I think, it feels all jumbled up. Roland Emmerich is not like a nuanced director. So you're just not going to, so he's all about broad strokes. He doesn't understand like human beings. They are just kind of, they're robots at Chuck E. Cheese to him, like to put on his play. That's what it feels like when you watch Roland Emmerich movies, in my opinion. They're just part of the set dressing. So I don't know. And I think, like I said, I think he fails when it comes to the large battle scenes and whatnot. I don't think that he shoots them very well. He does not do a good job of showing scale, which I was kind of surprised, right? It's like I said a little few minutes ago. Like the idea like that he just doesn't have kind of God's eye view control of the camera like he would if it was a CGI sequence seems to cripple him. Like he does not know how to just shoot stuff on that kind of scale and communicate it. Like communicate how big it actually is and how big the battles are and what is actually going on. It's very muddled. The only reason you know what's going on in the battle is not because you're able to observe it. It's because characters literally have to speak it out loud. There is no, like, you can't follow the geography of it. You can't follow the scenes that way. So, big swing and a miss, in my opinion. But like I said, but it is very watchable, though. So I can't just outright say, like, oh, don't ever watch The Patriot. It's awful. And even here, I'm looking at IMDb. It's got a 7.2, which is, I mean, that's pretty good. That means people like it. I think most people probably like The Patriot or have fond memories of it. I bet there's a lot of people my age that saw this when they were, 14 or 15 that probably like it, Actually, I think this was one of the first DVDs, or maybe it was the first DVD that was ever in my house, where my dad got a DVD player, and he brought home Mission Impossible 2 and The Patriot. That's right. Those were the two DVDs that we had in our house. And then I bought Frequency at some point. That was the first DVD I ever bought, which I think I mentioned on a different episode, one of these episodes. But yeah, The Patriot was one of the first things. So I've probably actually listened to The Patriot's audio commentary at some point when I was a teenager. I was a weird kid. But yeah. I don't know if I'd go do that again. I don't know if I'd go down that road again, but yeah, so you could watch it. You could not. I think it is on Netflix right now still. So if you're going to check it out, this would be the time to do it before they pull it off of Netflix. Because you're not like me. You don't own it. I got it on the shelf. I got it for posterity, baby. I got it up on there on that shelf. I'm like, oh, you want to watch The Patriot, do you? Well, give me another 5 years and maybe we'll talk about it. This hypothetical person at my house looking at my movie shelf. So there. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to know more about Zoobox, you want to keep up with everything Zoobox Nation, there's a bunch of links in the description for Facebook, for Instagram, for my personal Twitter. Also, if you'd like to make a recommendation for one of these daily videos or for something for the big show, Zoobox Goes to the Movies, leave it in the comments. I'll put it on the list. You have a great one.